On a mild February morning in 1998, in the sprawling suburbs of Los Angeles County, a young woman named Christina Ramirez left her apartment in Baldwin Park to meet someone she trusted. She was 23 years old, a part-time student at Pasadena City College studying early childhood education, and worked weekends at a local bookstore on the East Side. She told her roommate she'd be back by noon. She never returned. Her car was found 3 days later in the parking lot of a shuttered shopping center 12 miles away, keys still in the ignition, purse untouched on the passenger seat. No signs of struggle, no blood, no witnesses. For more than 2 decades, her family searched for answers in the silence that followed. They held vigils. They distributed flyers. They waited. And then, in the summer of 2021, a phone call would crack the case wide open in a way no one could have predicted. The arrests that followed would tear through a quiet community and force a reckoning with a truth that had been hidden in plain sight for 23 years. How does someone vanish in broad daylight? And how does a killer walk free for more than 2 decades while the people who loved them most search the faces of strangers, hopping for a glimpse of recognition? The city of Baldwin Park sits in the San Gabriel Valley, nestled between the towering San Gabriel Mountains to the north and the dense sprawl of greater Los Angeles to the south. In 1998, it was a working-class community of roughly 75,000 people, a place where families bought modest homes with chain-link fences and children rode bikes in cul-de-sacs until the streetlights flickered on. The main commercial strip along Main Avenue was dotted with auto body shops, payday loan stores, and family-run Mexican restaurants, where the smell of carne asada drifted into the street on summer evenings. It was the kind of place where people knew their neighbors, where the high school football games drew crowds on Friday nights, where everyone recognized the postal worker who delivered mail on foot, waving to kids on porches. Christina Ramirez had grown up here. She was the youngest of 3 children born to Maria and Hector Ramirez, both immigrants from Michoacan who had settled in Baldwin Park in the early 70s. Hector worked at a factory that manufactured industrial kitchen equipment. Maria cleaned houses in the wealthier neighborhoods of San Marino and South Pasadena. Christina had 2 older brothers, Miguel and Daniel, both of whom had graduated high school and found steady work in construction and landscaping. The family lived in a small 2-bedroom house on Vineland Avenue, painted pale yellow with white trim, where Maria kept a garden of tomatoes and jalapenos in the backyard and Hector spent Sunday afternoons tinkering with the engine of his aging Ford pickup. Christina had been a quiet child, her teachers remembered, but bright and attentive. She loved to read. In high school, she volunteered at the public library, shelving books and helping elderly patrons navigate the card catalog system. After graduation in 1993, she enrolled at Pasadena City College but had to drop out after 1 semester when her father was injured at work and the family needed her income. She found a job at a bookstore, a small independent shop called Page and Spine on Ramona Boulevard. She lived at home for a few years, saving money, helping her mother with groceries and bills. In 1997, she moved into a modest 1-bedroom apartment with her friend Lucia Ortiz, a girl she had known since middle school. The apartment was on Puente Avenue, a quiet residential street lined with jacaranda trees that bloomed violet in spring. That winter of 1998 was unseasonably warm. February brought clear skies and temperatures in the mid-70s, the kind of weather that made people forget it was supposed to be winter at all. On the morning of February 14th, a Saturday, Christina woke early. Lucia later remembered hearing the shower running at around 7:30. She heard the coffee maker burbling in the kitchen. She smelled the faint scent of Christina's vanilla body spray drifting through the thin walls of the apartment. Christina emerged from her bedroom dressed casually, jeans and a white t-shirt, a denim jacket draped over one arm. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail. She wore small silver hoop earrings, a gift from her mother the previous Christmas. Lucia was sitting on the couch, flipping through a magazine when Christina came into the living room. They exchanged a few words about the weather, about plans for the evening. Christina mentioned she was meeting someone for breakfast. She didn't say who. Lucia didn't ask. It was Valentine's Day, and Lucia assumed it was a date, maybe someone from school or work. Christina grabbed her purse, a brown leather bag she'd bought at a thrift store, and her keys. She said she'd be back by noon. Lucia said okay. Christina opened the front door and the sunlight spilled into the dim apartment. She stepped outside. The door clicked shut behind her. Lucia heard Christina's car engine turn over in the parking lot below. She heard the tires crunch on gravel as the car pulled away. She never saw Christina again. The hours passed slowly that day. Noon came and went. Lucia tried calling Christina's pager, entering her own number followed by 911, the signal they used for urgent callbacks. No response. By 2 in the afternoon, Lucia felt the first flutter of worry. By 4, she was packing the apartment, peering out the window at the empty parking space below. At 6, she called Christina's mother. Maria Ramirez said she hadn't heard from Christina all day. She sounded concerned but not alarmed. Young people were busy, she said. Maybe Christina had lost track of time. But as the evening darkened and the hours stretched toward midnight, Maria's voice on the phone grew tighter, sharper. Where was she? Who was she with? Lucia didn't know. On Sunday morning, Hector Ramirez drove to the apartment on Puente Avenue. He knocked on doors in the complex, asking if anyone had seen Christina. No one had. He drove the streets of Baldwin Park, scanning parking lots, checking the bookstore where she worked, circling the campus of Pasadena City College. Nothing. At 2 in the afternoon, he walked into the Baldwin Park Police Department and filed a missing persons report. The desk sergeant took down the information. Christina Marie Ramirez, age 23, 5'3", 110 pounds, brown eyes, black hair, last seen wearing jeans and a white t-shirt. The sergeant said they'd look into it. Hector stood there for a moment, staring at the form on the desk, and then he walked back out into the bright afternoon sunlight, his hands trembling. On Tuesday morning, February 17th, a security guard at the Sunset Plaza shopping center on Ramona Boulevard noticed a car parked in the far corner of the lot. It had been there since at least Sunday, he thought, maybe longer. The shopping center had closed 3 months earlier, its anchor tenants gone, its windows papered over. The lot was empty most days except for the occasional teenager doing donuts after dark or homeless people sleeping in their cars. The security guard approached the vehicle, a 1991 Honda Accord, silver, with a dent in the rear bumper. He peered through the driver's side window. The keys were in the ignition. A brown leather purse sat on the passenger seat. He radioed the Baldwin Park police. By Tuesday afternoon, a team of detectives had descended on the Sunset Plaza lot. They photographed the car from every angle, dusted for fingerprints, searched the interior with gloved hands. They found Christina's purse, her wallet inside with $43 cash and her driver's license. Her pager was in the glove compartment. There was no sign of a struggle, no blood, no torn fabric, no broken glass. The car was locked, the windows rolled up. The keys were still in the ignition, turned to the off position. It was as if she had simply parked, stepped out, and vanished into the air. The Baldwin Park Police Department launched a full-scale investigation. Officers canvassed the shopping center and the surrounding neighborhood, knocking on doors, asking if anyone had seen Christina or the silver Honda. They interviewed her family, her roommate, her coworkers at the bookstore. They checked her bank records. Her ATM card had not been used since Friday, February 13th, when she withdrew $20 from a Wells Fargo on Main Avenue. They pulled her phone records. The last call she made from her apartment was at 7:45 on Saturday morning, a brief 3-minute call to a number registered to a man named Eric Delgado. Eric Delgado was 29 years old, a mechanic who worked at an auto repair shop on Ramona Boulevard, less than a mile from the shuttered Sunset Plaza. He had grown up in Baldwin Park, graduated from Sierra Vista High School in 1987, and lived in a small house on Francisquito Avenue with his wife, Laura, and their 2 young children. He was known in the neighborhood as friendly, reliable, the kind of guy who would help you jumpstart your car or lend you tools. He had known Christina Ramirez for years. They had attended the same church, St. John the Baptist on Merced Avenue, where Christina sometimes volunteered in the Sunday school program. They were friends, he said when detectives came to his house on Wednesday evening. Just friends. Detective Samuel Torres and Detective Angela Ruiz sat in Eric Delgado's living room while Laura Delgado sat beside her husband on the couch, her hands folded in her lap, her face pale. Eric explained that Christina had called him on Saturday morning to ask if he could look at her car. She said it was making a strange noise, a rattling sound when she accelerated. He told her to meet him at the shop around 8:30. He said he had to open up for a few hours that morning to finish a rush job on a truck. Christina said fine, she'd be there. He waited for her at the shop, he said. She never showed up. He tried calling her pager around 9:15, but she didn't call back. He figured she had changed her mind or found someone else to look at the car. He went on with his day. He didn't think anything of it. Detective Torres wrote this down in his notebook. He asked Eric if he had tried calling Christina again after 9:15. Eric said no. Torres asked why not if she was a friend and she had asked for his help. Eric shrugged. He said he was busy. He had a family. He didn't have time to chase people down. Torres asked where Eric was the rest of that Saturday. Eric said he worked at the shop until around noon, then drove home. He spent the afternoon with his kids, took them to the park. His wife could confirm it. Laura nodded. She said they went to the park on Live Oak Avenue, the one with the playground and the basketball courts. They stayed until about 4, then came home and had dinner. Eric didn't leave the house again that night. Detective Ruiz asked if Eric had seen Christina's car anywhere near the shop. He said no. She asked if he had driven past the Sunset Plaza lot at any point over the weekend. He said no, not that he remembered. Ruiz asked if Christina had mentioned meeting anyone else that day, if she had other plans. Eric said she didn't say anything like that, just that she wanted him to look at her car. That was it. Torres asked if he could see Eric's truck, the one he drove. Eric said sure. They went outside. Eric's truck was parked in the driveway, a white Ford F-150, older model with rust on the wheel wells and a tool chest bolted in the bed. Torres asked if he could look inside. Eric said go ahead. Torres opened the passenger door, scanned the interior. Nothing unusual. A few fast food wrappers. An empty soda can. A rosary hanging from the rearview mirror. He thanked Eric and said they might have more questions later. Over the next several days, detectives interviewed Eric Delgado's coworkers at the auto shop. A man named Victor Sanchez, who worked as a technician alongside Eric, said Eric had been at the shop on Saturday morning, February 14th. He arrived around 7:30, Victor said. He left around 11:30, maybe noon. Victor didn't remember Eric mentioning anything about meeting Christina. Another coworker, a man named Jimmy Ortiz, said Eric seemed normal that day. He was working on a transmission job for a Chevy Silverado. He made jokes. He complained about the Lakers game the night before. Nothing seemed off. But there were small things, tiny inconsistencies that began to gather like dust in the corners. One of Eric's neighbors, a woman named Dolores Vega, told detectives she had seen Eric washing his truck on Sunday afternoon, February 15th. She remembered because it struck her as odd. Eric usually washed his truck on Saturday mornings, she said. She had lived next door to him for 6 years, and it was a routine she noticed. Seeing him wash it on Sunday seemed unusual. Another neighbor, a man named Robert Kim, said he had seen Eric loading something into the bed of his truck late Saturday night, around 11 or 11:30. Kim had been coming home from work, a night shift at a warehouse, and he saw Eric in his driveway under the yellow glow of the porch light. Eric was carrying what looked like a rolled-up tarp or carpet, Kim said. He couldn't be sure. It was dark. Eric put it in the truck and went back inside. Kim thought nothing of it at the time. Detectives also spoke to Christina's friends and family. Her mother, Maria, said Christina had never mentioned Eric Delgado in a romantic context. They were friends, she said, nothing more. Christina had dated a few people over the years, nothing serious. She had been focused on school and work. Her roommate, Lucia, said the same thing. Christina never talked about Eric as anything other than a friend from church. If Christina was meeting someone on Valentine's Day, Lucia didn't know who. Christina had been private about her personal life, Lucia said. She didn't share everything. Those who knew Eric Delgado described him as steady, dependable, a family man. His wife Laura was quiet, reserved, a stay-at-home mother who kept the house clean and attended Mass every Sunday. They had 2 children, a boy named Marco, age 7, and a girl named Alina, age 4. Eric coached Marco's little league team. He helped with church fundraisers. He fixed cars for people in the neighborhood at discounted rates. Deputies whispered quietly among themselves about the neighbor's account of the truck, the tarp, the late-night activity. But there was no physical evidence, no body, no witnesses, no concrete link between Eric Delgado and Christina Ramirez's disappearance beyond a phone call and a missed appointment. Search teams combed the hills and ravines around Baldwin Park. Volunteers from the community joined law enforcement, walking in lines through the dry brush, peering into storm drains, checking abandoned buildings. They searched the San Gabriel River basin, the industrial lots along the railroad tracks, the empty fields behind the old orange groves. They found nothing. Helicopters circled overhead, their rotors thumping against the pale blue sky. News crews set up cameras outside the Ramirez family home, broadcasting tearful pleas from Maria and Hector for anyone with information to come forward. Christina's face appeared on flyers taped to telephone poles and storefront windows all over the east side. Missing. Last seen February 14, 1998. If you have any information, please call. But as the weeks passed, the leads dried up. The tips that came in led nowhere. People reported seeing a woman who looked like Christina in a grocery store in Pomona, at a gas station in West Covina, walking along a highway in Riverside. None of it panned out. The case began to cool. Detectives moved on to other investigations. The news crews packed up their cameras and chased other stories. The flyers faded in the sun and peeled from the poles. The volunteers stopped showing up for search parties. And Christina Ramirez remained gone, vanished into the sprawling anonymity of Los Angeles County, a ghost haunting the streets where she had grown up. The months turned into years. The Ramirez family tried to hold on to hope, but hope is a fragile thing, easily worn down by time and silence. Maria kept Christina's bedroom exactly as it had been the day she moved out. The bed was made with a floral comforter. Posters of Selena and Mark Anthony hung on the walls. A stack of textbooks from Pasadena City College sat on the desk. Maria would go into the room sometimes, sit on the edge of the bed and cry quietly. Hector stopped talking about Christina in the present tense. He began to refer to her in the past. She was a good girl, he would say. She loved to read. He said it like an epitaph. In the fall of 1999, the family held a memorial service at St. John the Baptist Church. They had no body to bury, but they needed something, some ritual to mark the loss, to give it shape. The church was full. Friends, neighbors, people from the bookstore where Christina had worked. Father Miguel gave a homily about faith and the mystery of God's plan. Maria sobbed in the front pew, her body shaking. Miguel and Daniel stood beside her, their faces hard and blank. Eric Delgado and his family were there, sitting toward the back. Laura held little Elena on her lap. Marco sat beside his father, swinging his legs, bored. After the service, Eric approached Maria Ramirez and offered his condolences. He said he was sorry, that he wished he could have done more to help. Maria looked at him for a long moment, her eyes red and swollen, and then she turned away without a word. For those who have ever doubted someone you love, who have felt the cold creep of suspicion settle over a familiar face, you understand the particular agony of not knowing. There is no closure in absence, only a door that never quite closes, a question that echoes unanswered in the hollow spaces of your life. The Ramirez family lived with that agony every day. They saw Christina in crowds. They heard her laugh in the voices of strangers. They woke from dreams where she was alive, standing in the kitchen, pouring coffee, and then reality would crash back down like a fist. Meanwhile, in the small house on Francisquito Avenue, life continued. Eric Delgado went to work. Laura Delgado took care of the children. They attended church on Sundays. They celebrated birthdays and holidays. To the outside world, they were a normal family, unremarkable, stable. But inside the house, something had shifted. Laura grew quieter over the years. She stopped inviting friends over. She stopped participating in the church social events. Her mother, Connie Morales, who lived in nearby El Monte, noticed the change. She asked Laura if everything was okay. Laura said yes, everything was fine, but Connie didn't believe her. There was something in Laura's eyes, something distant and afraid. The children grew. Marco started middle school. Elena started elementary. Laura homeschooled them for a while, pulling them out of public school in 2003. She said it was for religious reasons, that she wanted more control over their education. But friends and family wondered if there was more to it. The Delgado house became a place of routines and silences. Eric left for work early in the morning and came home late. He spent weekends in the garage, tinkering with engines, drinking beer, watching sports on a small television he kept on the workbench. Laura cooked and cleaned and supervised the children's lessons. She rarely left the house except to go to the grocery store or to mass. She stopped talking to her old friends. She stopped returning calls. In the summer of 2006, Marco began acting out. He was 14 years old, sullen and angry. He fought with his father. He refused to do his chores. One night he came home with alcohol on his breath, stumbling up the driveway. Eric dragged him into the house and screamed at him for an hour. Laura stood in the kitchen, listening, her hands gripping the edge of the counter. She didn't intervene. She didn't say a word. Marco ran away twice that year. Both times the police brought him home. Eric told the officers it was just teenage rebellion, that he'd straightened the boy out. The officers wrote it up in their reports and moved on. Elena, the younger child, was different. She was quiet, obedient, almost too well-behaved. She did her schoolwork without complaint. She helped her mother in the kitchen. She went to church without protest. But those who saw her, the few family members who still visited, noticed something unsettling in her demeanor. She flinched when her father raised his voice. She never looked him in the eye. She had a habit of biting her nails until they bled. When Connie Morales asked her if she was okay, Elena nodded quickly and changed the subject. She was 12 years old, small for her age, with her mother's dark eyes and her father's square jaw. Laura and Eric's marriage began to fracture visibly. They fought more often. Neighbors heard raised voices through the walls. One night in 2009, a patrol car was called to the house for a domestic disturbance. When the officers arrived, Laura had a red mark on her cheek. She said she had tripped and hit the door frame. Eric stood behind her, arms crossed, silent. The officers asked if she wanted to press charges or if she needed help. She said no. They left. The incident was documented in a police report and filed away. 2011, Laura Delgado took the children and moved out. She told her mother she couldn't live with Eric anymore. She didn't explain why. She rented a small apartment in West Covina, enrolled the kids in public school, and filed for divorce. Eric didn't contest it. The divorce was finalized in the spring of 2012. Laura got custody of the children. Eric paid minimal child support and saw Marco and Alina on weekends, though Marco, now 20 years old, refused to visit. He wanted nothing to do with his father. Alina, 17, still went dutifully, saying little about what happened during those visits. For those who have ever doubted someone you love, who have carried a secret you could not name, who have felt the weight of unspoken truth pressing down on your chest like a stone, you understand what it means to live in the shadow of something terrible. Laura Delgado knew something. She had known for years, but she had said nothing. She had kept the silence, sealed it tight, buried it deep. And in that silence, Christina Ramirez remained lost. On a warm evening in June 2021, Alina Delgado sat in a therapist's office in West Covina. She was 26 years old, working as a medical assistant at a clinic in Pomona, living in a small apartment near her mother. She had started therapy 6 months earlier, struggling with anxiety and insomnia, with nightmares that jolted her awake in the middle of the night. The therapist, a woman named Dr. Patricia Reyes, had been patient, gentle, building trust slowly. And then in that session, something broke. Alina began to cry. She said there was something she needed to talk about, something she had never told anyone. Dr. Reyes waited. Alina took a shaky breath and said that when she was 4 years old, she had seen something. Something she didn't understand at the time. Something that had haunted her for more than 2 decades. She said that one night, very late, she had woken up and come out of her bedroom. She saw her father in the garage. He was digging a hole in the dirt floor beneath the concrete pad where he parked his truck. There was something wrapped in a blue tarp. She didn't know what it was. He told her to go back to bed. She did. She never spoke of it, but she remembered. She had always remembered. Dr. Reyes, bound by certain legal and ethical obligations, informed Alina that some things, particularly if they involved potential harm or crimes, might need to be reported. Alina nodded. She said she understood. She said she was ready. A week later, with Alina's consent, Dr. Reyes contacted the Baldwin Park Police Department. On July 2, 2021, Detectives Amanda Cross and Robert Hernandez, assigned to the cold case unit of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, sat down with Alina Delgado in an interview room. Alina was nervous, her hands trembling, but her voice was steady. She told them what she had told her therapist. She said that in February of 1998, when she was 4 years old, she remembered her father acting strangely. She remembered him coming home late one night, agitated, his clothes dirty. She remembered her mother crying in the bedroom. And she remembered with a clarity that startled even her, the night she saw him in the garage with the hole and the blue tarp. The detectives asked her questions. Could she describe the tarp? Blue, she said, like a painter's tarp or a camping tarp. Could she remember anything else? She remembered a smell, something chemical like bleach or ammonia. She remembered her father's face, the way he looked at her when he saw her standing in the doorway. He wasn't angry, she said. He looked scared. He told her it was a secret, that she shouldn't tell anyone, that it was grown-up business. She was 4 years old. She went back to bed. She tried to forget, but she never did. Detectives Cross and Hernandez pulled the original case file on Christina Ramirez. They reviewed the evidence, the witness statements, the timeline. They saw the note about Eric Delgado, the phone call, the missed appointment, the neighbor's account of the truck and the tarp. They contacted the current owner of the house on Francisquito Avenue and requested permission to search the property. The owner, a man who had purchased the house from Eric Delgado in 2015, agreed. On July 12, 2021, a forensic team arrived at the house with ground-penetrating radar equipment. They scanned the garage. The radar detected an anomaly beneath the concrete floor in the rear left corner near where the truck had been parked. The team brought in jackhammers. They broke through the concrete. They dug into the dirt beneath. 3 feet down, they found remnants of a blue tarp. Beneath the tarp, they found human remains, skeletal, partially decomposed, wrapped in deteriorated fabric. DNA testing would later confirm what the investigators already suspected. The remains were those of Christina Marie Ramirez. On July 23, 2021, detectives arrested Eric Delgado at his apartment in Azusa, where he had been living alone since the divorce. He was 62 years old, graying, heavier than he had been in 1998. He was charged with first-degree murder. The arrest made headlines across Southern California. Shocked neighbors, people who had known Eric for years, gave interviews to local news stations. "I can't believe it," one woman said. "He seemed like such a normal guy." Another man said, "He coached my son's baseball team. He was always so friendly." 2 days later, detectives arrested Laura Delgado at her apartment in West Covina. She was charged as an accessory after the fact. She had known, prosecutors argued, or should have known. She had helped cover it up, whether through active participation or through willful silence. Laura's arrest shocked the community even more. How could a mother, a churchgoer, a woman who seemed so quiet and gentle, have lived with such a secret? Her daughter Elena, the young woman who had finally spoken the truth, released a brief statement through her attorney. "I did what I had to do for Christina, for her family, and for myself. The truth deserves to be heard." Marco Delgado, Elena's older brother, also came forward. He told investigators that he had always suspected something. He didn't have specific memories like Elena did, but he remembered the tension in the house, the fights, the way his father shut down any mention of Christina Ramirez's name over the years. He remembered his mother's fear. He said he had cut off contact with his father years ago because he couldn't stand to be around him. He didn't know why at the time, he said, but something inside him had always known. The prosecution built its case methodically. They presented Elena's testimony, the physical evidence recovered from the garage, and the forensic analysis. The blue tarp fibers matched fibers found in Eric Delgado's truck, which had been sold years earlier but tracked down and examined. They brought in the neighbors who had seen Eric washing his truck and loading something into it late that night in February 1998. They brought in the coworkers who testified to small inconsistencies in Eric's timeline. They brought in cell phone records, old pager records, anything that could piece together the final hours of Christina Ramirez's life. His initial interviews after arrest, Eric Delgado said nothing. He invoked his right to remain silent and requested an attorney. But months later, facing overwhelming evidence, he agreed to a plea deal. In exchange for avoiding the death penalty, he confessed. He told investigators that Christina had come to him that Saturday morning as planned. They talked. She mentioned that she was thinking about moving away, maybe going back to school full-time, starting fresh somewhere else. He said he panicked. He had been infatuated with her for years, he admitted. He had made advances before, subtle ones which she had always deflected gently. That morning in the empty auto shop, he tried again. She rejected him firmly. He said he lost control. He strangled her. He put her body in the back of his truck, covered it with a tarp, and drove her car to the Sunset Plaza lot to make it look like she had simply disappeared. That night, after his wife and children were asleep, he buried Christina's body in the garage floor. Laura, he insisted, didn't know until days later. When she found out, she begged him to turn himself in. He threatened her, he said. He told her that if she said anything, he would make sure she lost the children, that he would destroy her. She stayed silent out of fear. Laura Delgado's attorney argued that she was a victim too, trapped in an abusive marriage, terrified for her children's safety. The prosecution argued that she had choices, that she could have spoken up, that her silence had allowed a killer to walk free for more than 2 decades. The debate raged in courtrooms and in living rooms across Los Angeles. Was she complicit? Was she coerced? Could both things be true? In April 2023, Eric Delgado pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 15 years to life in state prison. Laura Delgado took a plea deal and was sentenced to 3 years in county jail with credit for time served and probation. The courtroom was full the day of sentencing. Maria Ramirez, now in her 70s, her hair silver, her face lined with grief, sat in the front row. She did not speak. She did not cry. She simply watched as the judge read the sentence. Hector had passed away in 2017, never knowing what had happened to his daughter. Miguel and Daniel sat on either side of their mother, their faces hard and unreadable. After the hearing, Maria Ramirez gave a brief statement to the press outside the courthouse. Her voice was quiet but firm. "My daughter is home now," she said. "After 23 years, we can finally lay her to rest. I don't forgive him. I don't forgive anyone who knew and stayed silent. But I am grateful to Alina for her courage. She gave us the truth. That is more than we ever thought we would have." Christina Ramirez was laid to rest in a quiet cemetery in Baldwin Park on a clear afternoon in May 2023. The funeral was attended by family, friends, and members of the community who remembered her, who had searched for her, who had never stopped wondering. Father Miguel, the same priest who had presided over her memorial service 24 years earlier, gave the homily. He spoke of justice and mercy, of the long road to truth, of the mysteries we carry, and the courage it takes to speak them aloud. Maria Ramirez stood beside the grave, a single white rose in her hand, and whispered something too soft for anyone else to hear. Then she placed the rose on the casket and walked away. This case, like so many others, reminds us that the truth can wait decades in silence, buried beneath concrete and fear, but it does not disappear. It waits. And sometimes, when the moment is right, when someone finds the strength to speak, it rises. Christina Ramirez was not forgotten. She was carried in the hearts of those who loved her, in the nightmares of a child who saw too much, in the guilt of those who knew and said nothing. Her story is a testament to the power of persistence, the fragility of justice, and the enduring need for truth, no matter how long it takes to surface. If this story mattered to you, subscribe and hit the bell. Share the episode. Someone somewhere may still be waiting to be heard.